The city was alive that night, bright lights, busy streets, and yet, for Oriv Malhotra, everything felt strangely empty. He sat at the head table of a grand charity gala, surrounded by people in glittering clothes, fake smiles, and empty conversations. He nodded, shook hands, even gave a small speech about helping the less fortunate. The audience applauded, impressed by the millionaire who looked like he had mastered life. But inside, Oriv felt hollow. When the gala ended, he slipped out quietly, refusing the chauffeur's offer and choosing to drive himself. The rain had started, gentle at first, then heavier, blurring the city lights into long, glowing streaks across his windshield. As he drove past a narrow street, his eyes caught something unusual. A woman. She sat curled up on the pavement, her knees pulled to her chest, her thin dupatta barely protecting her from the rain. People walked by her as if she was invisible. Cars rushed past. But her stillness was louder than all the noise around. Something inside Oriv tugged. He slowed down, pulled over, and lowered the window. "Do you need help?" His voice was uncertain, almost awkward. He wasn't used to asking strangers that. The woman slowly looked up. Her eyes, they weren't like the eyes of someone who begged. They carried pain, yes, but also a quiet dignity, as if she was holding on to the last piece of herself that life hadn't managed to steal. "I don't want your money," she said softly, her voice trembling but firm. "I just need a little kindness." Oriv froze. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him like that, not for his wealth, not for favors, just for humanity. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zoya," she whispered. He noticed her hands were shaking from the cold. Without thinking, he stepped out of the car, opened the back seat, and held out his hand. "Come on. At least get out of this rain." Zoya hesitated. Her pride and her vulnerability were at war. But then another cold gust of wind made her shiver, and she finally took his hand. Her touch was light, almost weightless, but it sent an unexpected warmth through him. Inside the car, the silence stretched. Oriv stole a glance at her, drenched clothes clinging to her frail frame, strands of wet hair sticking to her face. She looked exhausted, but her eyes kept scanning everything with quiet caution. "You're safe," Oriv said gently, sensing her unease. "Where do you stay?" Zoya looked down at her hands. "Nowhere." The single word hit him harder than he expected. He cleared his throat. "Then tonight, you'll stay somewhere safe. I'll make sure of it." She didn't answer, just turned her face toward the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. As the car moved forward, Oriv's mind drifted unexpectedly, to another woman, another rainy evening years ago. Mira. The love he once thought was his forever. The woman who had been his laughter, his peace, his dream. But misunderstandings and family pressures had ripped them apart. He had drowned himself in work, building an empire, but the emptiness inside had never gone away. And now, here sat Zoya, silent, broken, yet strangely strong. He didn't know why, but something told him this meeting wasn't just chance. Life was bringing him to a crossroad he hadn't seen coming. Because in just a few weeks, fate would drag him into a place he thought he'd left behind forever, Mira's wedding. And Zoya would be right there with him. The drive to Oriv's mansion was silent. Zoya sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the rain outside as if counting every drop. Oriv wanted to ask her more, how she ended up on the streets, what happened to her family, but something about her posture told him she wasn't ready. When the car pulled up at his gates, Zoya's eyes widened. The iron gate swung open, revealing a sprawling white bungalow lit softly against the night sky. It looked less like a house and more like a world far away from hers. She whispered almost to herself, "This can't be real." Oriv parked and stepped out. "Come inside. You're shivering." She followed him hesitantly, her wet sandals leaving faint marks on the polished marble floor. Everything inside glowed, warm lights, expensive art, the faint smell of sandalwood. But instead of feeling impressed, Zoya felt smaller with each step, like she didn't belong. Oriv noticed her unease. "It's just a house, Zoya. Don't let the walls scare you." He led her to a guest room, a large, airy space with a soft bed and neatly arranged flowers on the side table. She stood frozen at the door, unable to step in. I can't stay here," she murmured. "I'll dirty everything." I don't fit. Oriv turned to her, his tone calm but firm. You're not a burden. You're a guest. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to appear weak. The house staff arrived with warm towels and food. Zoya looked at the tray, fresh chapatis, steaming dal, sabzi, and kheer. The aroma alone made her stomach twist with hunger, but she hesitated, her pride holding her back. Oriv placed the tray in front of her. Eat. No one here will judge you. Her resistance broke. She ate slowly at first, then with trembling urgency. Oriv quietly sat across the room, watching. Not out of pity, but with an odd curiosity. Who was this woman who carried both fragility and strength so gracefully? When she finally put the spoon down, she whispered, "Thank you. I don't know why you stopped for me. No one else would have." Oriv leaned back, his voice low. "Maybe because I know what it feels like, to be invisible even when you're surrounded by people." For the first time, Zoya met his eyes. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Two broken souls recognizing each other's loneliness. Before leaving the room, Oriv added softly, "Good night, Zoya. You're safe here." Zoya lay awake that night on the soft bed. She thought about the streets she had walked, the cold nights she had survived, and now this, a stranger's kindness. She didn't trust fate, but somewhere deep inside, a fragile hope stirred. Meanwhile, in his own room, Oriv poured himself a drink but left it untouched. His mind wandered back to Mira, the woman he had once promised forever to. He hadn't seen her in years. But tomorrow, he would hear news that would shake him, news of her wedding. And he had no idea that fate was planning to bring Zoya into that very storm. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the wide windows of Oriv's mansion. The rain had washed the city clean, leaving the air fresh, almost hopeful. Zoya woke up slowly, her body still not used to the comfort of a soft mattress. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until her eyes landed on the polished wooden furniture and the vase of lilies by the bed. She sat up abruptly, clutching her dupatta around her shoulders. A gentle knock came at the door. "Zoya, may I?" Oriv's deep voice carried through. She opened the door slightly, still nervous. Oriv stood there, not in a suit this time but in a simple white shirt and grey trousers. He looked less like a millionaire and more like a man who belonged in ordinary mornings. I should leave today," Zoya said quickly, before he could speak. "You've helped me enough. I don't want to be a problem." Oriv studied her quietly. "And go where?" "Back to the streets." Her silence was answer enough. "Stay for a while," he said softly. "At least until you find your ground." Zoya lowered her gaze, torn between pride and gratitude. "Finally," she whispered, "just a few days. No more." Oriv gave a small smile. "Deal." In the kitchen, Oriv surprised her by making tea himself. She watched as he clumsily handled the kettle. "You don't look like a man who makes tea often," she remarked, a faint trace of amusement in her tone. He chuckled. "You're right. Usually, someone else does. But today felt different." For the first time, Zoya let a tiny smile escape. It was fleeting, but Oriv noticed. Later that day, as Oriv prepared to head to his office, his phone buzzed. It was Kabir, his childhood friend and business partner. "Oriv, you heard." Kabir's voice was eager. "Heard what?" Oriv asked, distracted. "Mira Kapoor is getting married. Next month." The words hit him like a punch. Oriv froze, his hand tightening around the phone. His heart stuttered painfully at the name he hadn't allowed himself to speak in years. Mira. His Mira. "She's marrying Rohan Mehta," Kabir continued. "Big business tycoon, their families are going all out. The wedding will be huge. Everyone in the city will be there." Oriv didn't reply. His throat felt dry, memories crashing into him. Mira's laughter, their stolen college walks, the night he slipped a ring on her finger under the stars, the bitter fight that tore them apart. Zoya, who had been standing nearby, noticed the sudden change in his expression. His face had gone pale, his eyes distant. "Are you okay?" she asked carefully. Oriv blinked, forcing himself back. "Yes. Just an old memory." But that night, as he sat alone in his study, the memories wouldn't let him rest. He opened an old drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside lay a velvet box. He opened it slowly. The engagement ring. The one he had bought for Mira. His chest tightened. She was moving on. Building a life without him. And yet, why did it hurt like the wound was fresh? He whispered to himself, maybe this is what I deserve. Maybe I was never enough. Little did he know, fate was already weaving a thread between him, Zoya, and Mira, one that would unravel at the wedding and change all three lives forever. The night after hearing about Mira's wedding was restless for Oriv. He tossed in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying old memories like a film reel he couldn't pause. The sound of her laughter. The sparkle in her eyes when she used to dream about their future. The day she slipped the ring off her finger, tears staining her cheeks. Sleep refused to come. Finally, near dawn, Oriv walked into the garden with a cup of coffee. The air was crisp, dew clinging to the grass. He hoped the silence would calm his thoughts. But he wasn't alone. Zoya was sitting on the stone bench under the mango tree, hugging her knees, her hair falling loose around her face. "You're awake too?" Oriv asked gently. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "Some nights don't let you sleep." Oriv sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Bad dreams?" Zoya gave a faint smile. "No dreams at all. That's worse." Oriv studied her, wanting to ask about her past but stopping himself. She clearly carried wounds she wasn't ready to share. Instead, he said, sometimes the past keeps us awake more than the present. Their eyes met for a brief moment. It was as if both recognized something familiar in each other, loss. Later that day, Kabir visited. He barged into Oriv's study without knocking, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You still look shaken," Kabir said, handing one to him. Oriv sighed. "I thought I was over her. Mira." But hearing about her wedding, he trailed off. Kabir leaned forward. "Maybe you should go. Face her one last time. Get closure." Oriv shook his head. "What's the point? She's moved on." Kabir smirked faintly. "Then why does your heart still stumble at her name?" Oriv didn't answer. Meanwhile, Zoya wandered the house, exploring carefully like a guest who didn't want to overstep. She paused at the piano in the living room, its surface gleaming under the sunlight. Almost unconsciously, she touched the keys, pressing a soft note. The sound filled the room, awakening something buried inside her. Her fingers moved, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence, forming a melody, gentle, melancholic, beautiful. Oriv, passing by, froze at the sound. He hadn't heard that piano played since. Mira. She used to fill the house with music. But this was different. Zoya's tune wasn't polished, but it was raw, full of unspoken emotions. When she noticed him standing there, she pulled her hands back quickly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Don't," Oriv interrupted softly. "It was beautiful." Her cheeks warmed slightly, unused to such words. "Music is the only thing I carried with me from my old life. Everything else was taken." He wanted to ask who took it, what happened, but her eyes warned him not to dig too deep. Still, something about her presence filled the silence in his home, the emptiness that had lingered for years. That evening, Kabir called again. His tone was unusually sharp. "Oriv, listen. I just got word, Mira's engagement party is this weekend. It's a grand affair. Everyone from the business world is invited, including us." Oriv gripped the phone tightly. His heart thundered. "And if I refuse?" Kabir sighed. "You can't. If you skip it, people will talk. It'll look like you're still not over her. You've built an empire, Oriv. Don't let emotions make you look weak." When the call ended, Oriv stood by the window, staring into the night. For the first time in years, he felt fear. Fear of seeing her. Fear of pretending he didn't still love her. Zoya entered quietly, carrying a tray of tea. She noticed his tense posture. "You look troubled." He turned to her, searching her face for a reason he didn't understand. Finally, he whispered, "Zoya, tell me, Do you believe in second chances? She hesitated, then said, only if both hearts still want the same thing. Her words lingered long after she left the room. Because deep down, Oriv knew his heart hadn't stopped wanting Mira. But fate had other plans. The news of Mira's engagement echoed in Oriv's mind like a drumbeat he couldn't silence. For 2 days, he tried to convince himself he wouldn't go. That he didn't need to. That the past should remain buried. But life doesn't always listen. The day of the engagement arrived, and Kabir came to pick him up. Oriv stood in front of his mirror, buttoning his black sherwani with steady hands, but his reflection betrayed him, his eyes carried storms. Zoya, standing by the door, watched quietly. She had insisted on leaving the mansion earlier that morning, but Oriv had stopped her. Not yet, he had said. You don't have to disappear so soon. Now, as he prepared to face the night, Zoya felt a strange pull in her chest. She didn't understand why his pain mattered to her, but it did. Before leaving, Kabir looked at Zoya and smirked. Why don't you come too? Oriv could use someone by his side tonight. Oriv frowned. Kabir. But Zoya, sensing his hesitation, softly said, if you want me there, I'll come. For reasons he couldn't explain, Oriv nodded. The engagement venue glittered like a palace, chandeliers, flowers, music. Guests in dazzling attire filled the hall, their laughter echoing. Oriv entered with Zoya by his side. Heads turned immediately. Whispers spread like wildfire. That's Oriv Malhotra. And who's the girl with him? She's not from high society. Zoya felt the weight of their stares, her heartbeat quickening. She wore a simple peach salwar kameez Oriv had insisted on buying for her. Compared to the women dripping in diamonds, she felt out of place. But Oriv walked beside her confidently, as if her presence was enough. Then came the moment he had been dreading. Across the hall, under the golden lights, stood Mira Kapoor. She was radiant, dressed in emerald green, her smile dazzling as guests congratulated her and her fiancé, Rohan Mehta. But when her eyes fell on Oriv, the smile faltered, just for a second. Their gazes locked, and time seemed to stop. Zoya, standing beside Oriv, noticed the silent storm between them. She felt it, the history, the unfinished story. Kabir leaned in and whispered, steady, Oriv. Don't let them see your cracks. As the evening went on, Oriv forced himself to greet people, smile at acquaintances, nod at compliments. But his eyes kept drifting to Mira. She too, despite her efforts, kept stealing glances his way. At one point, Rohan put his arm around Mira, laughing loudly. Oriv's jaw clenched, his hand tightening around his glass. Zoya noticed. Quietly, she whispered, breathe, Oriv. Don't let the past destroy your present. Her voice, calm and steady, grounded him. He looked at her and for a brief moment, found strength. But fate wasn't done testing him. Halfway through the evening, a relative approached Mira and Oriv together, smiling broadly. Ah, my two favorite people in one place. Mira, you remember Oriv, don't you? The air froze. Mira forced a polite smile. Of course. How could I forget? Oriv nodded stiffly. Congratulations, Mira. You look happy. Her eyes flickered with unspoken words. Thank you. I hope you're happy too. Zoya stood silently beside Oriv, watching the fragile exchange. Something inside her twisted, an ache she couldn't name. Later, away from the crowd, Oriv stepped onto the terrace to breathe. Zoya followed, sensing his turmoil. She still matters to you, Zoya said softly. Oriv didn't deny it. She was my everything once. And now, she belongs to someone else. For a moment, his voice broke. Zoya placed a gentle hand on the railing, not too close, not too far. Maybe some loves aren't meant to last forever. Maybe they just teach us how deep the heart can go. He turned to look at her, truly look at her. In her eyes, he didn't see pity. He saw understanding. But before he could respond, a voice called sharply from behind. Oriv. It was Mira. Standing at the terrace door, her expression unreadable. Zoya stepped back, her heart sinking. Something told her this night was about to change everything. The terrace was quiet, the sounds of laughter and music muffled behind closed doors. The night breeze carried the faint scent of roses from the garden below. Oriv stood frozen, glass in hand, as Mira walked toward him. Her emerald dress shimmered under the moonlight, but it wasn't her beauty that struck him, it was the storm in her eyes. "Hello, Oriv," she said, her voice steady but softer than he remembered. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Years of bottled emotions rose like a tide, choking him. Finally, he managed, "Hello, Mira." There was a pause. The kind of pause that feels heavier than words. "You came," she said, as if surprised. "I had to," he replied simply. Her lips curved into a faint, ironic smile. "Of course. Oriv Malhotra never misses a social event. Still the perfect gentleman, I see." He flinched at the hidden edge in her words. "And you still know how to cut without a knife." Their eyes locked. For a moment, it was as if no time had passed. Zoya, sensing the gravity of the moment, quietly slipped away from the terrace, giving them space. But as she walked back inside, her chest felt strangely heavy. Mira crossed her arms, her voice lowering. "Why now, Oriv? Why show up after all these years? Do you want me to feel guilty on my engagement night?" Oriv's jaw tightened. "Guilty? Mira, you were the one who left. You walked away." Her eyes flashed. "Because you let me." The words hit him like lightning. "You think I wanted that?" he snapped. "You think it didn't break me to watch you walk away? I begged you to fight for us, Mira. But you chose your family's pride over our love." Mira's voice trembled, though she tried to keep it steady. "Don't twist it, Oriv. You were drowning in ambition. You wanted the world, and I just wanted you. But I couldn't compete with your empire." Oriv's chest rose and fell sharply. "So instead of trusting me, you left. You married your silence. And now you're marrying someone else." Mira's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them back. "Yes. Because I had to survive, Oriv. Do you know what it's like to wait for someone who's always chasing something bigger than you?" Silence. The kind of silence where only broken hearts speak. Inside the hall, Zoya watched from a distance, her hands clutching the edge of her dupatta. She couldn't hear their words, but she could see their faces. The pain, the longing, the unresolved love. And for reasons she didn't understand, it hurt her too. On the terrace, Oriv finally exhaled, his voice raw. "So this is it. After all these years, this is what we're left with? A few bitter memories and a lot of what-ifs." Mira swallowed hard. Maybe that's all we were meant to be. But her eyes betrayed her. They still searched for him, still held the fragments of love that time hadn't killed. Oriv stepped closer, his voice low, almost pleading. "Tell me, Mira. Just once. Do you feel nothing for me anymore?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Her silence was louder than any confession. At that very moment, Rohan appeared at the terrace door, calling out cheerfully, "There you are, sweetheart. Everyone's waiting for us." Mira stiffened. She turned quickly, wiping her eyes. "Coming." Before leaving, she glanced back at Oriv one last time. A look full of everything she couldn't say. And then she was gone. Oriv stood rooted, his chest heavy, his hands trembling. When he turned back, he saw Zoya standing quietly at the corner of the hallway. She had seen enough. Their eyes met, and Oriv suddenly realized he wasn't the only one hurting tonight. The ride home after the engagement was heavy with silence. Kabir drove, humming casually to mask the tension, but Oriv sat beside him, staring blankly out the window. In the back seat, Zoya kept her eyes lowered, fiddling with the edge of her dupatta. When they finally reached the mansion, Kabir clapped Oriv on the shoulder. "Good night, brother. Forget the past. You survived tonight, and that's enough." But Oriv didn't respond. He just walked inside. Zoya followed quietly, unsure if she should leave him alone or stay close. Something in his posture, rigid, heavy, defeated, made her hesitate. Later, Zoya found him in the study, sitting in the dark with a half-empty glass of whiskey. The only light came from the moon filtering through the curtains. She stood at the door for a long moment before whispering, you shouldn't drink so much. It won't make the pain go away. Oriv looked up, startled. Then a hollow smile curved his lips. And what do you know about pain, Zoya? Her eyes darkened, but her voice stayed calm. Enough to recognize it when I see it. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. I thought I was prepared to see her. But one look, and it felt like I was bleeding all over again. Zoya stepped closer, her voice soft. That's because some wounds don't heal with time. They only learn how to hide. For a moment, their eyes met. And in that silence, something shifted, like two broken pieces recognizing they might fit together. The days that followed were quieter. Oriv threw himself into work, attending meetings, checking deals. But at night, when the world slept, he found Zoya in the kitchen, sipping tea alone. One night, he joined her. You always drink tea this late, he asked. She smiled faintly. Tea is cheaper than sleep. He chuckled. And why can't you sleep? Her gaze dropped to the cup in her hands. Because memories are louder at night. Oriv's heart tightened at her words. He wanted to ask, but he held back. Instead, he poured himself tea and sat beside her. They drank in silence, but it wasn't an awkward silence. It was comforting. Slowly, small moments began to stitch their connection. Zoya dusting the books in his library and pausing to read poetry aloud. Oriv listening, surprised at how her voice softened the harshness of the words. Oriv showing her how to use the grand piano, their fingers brushing lightly over the keys. Zoya laughing, a sound so rare, it startled even herself. The mansion, once silent and cold, began to feel alive again. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Oriv found Zoya in the living room, sketching on a piece of paper. You draw? He asked curiously. She quickly tried to hide it, but he gently took the paper. It was a rough sketch of the mansion, but not the way it looked from the outside. Instead, she had drawn the view from within, the corridors, the grand staircase, the empty rooms. You drew the emptiness, Oriv whispered. Her voice trembled. That's how it felt the first day I came here. Big, beautiful, but empty. He looked at her, something tightening in his chest. And now? She hesitated, then gave a small smile. Now it feels like home. The word struck him deeply. For years, his house had been nothing more than walls. But this stranger, this broken woman, had found warmth where he had felt none. That night, as Zoya retired to her room, Oriv lingered at his study window, watching the rain. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel suffocating. But just as hope began to stir in him, his phone buzzed. It was Kabir. Oriv, brace yourself. There's news. Oriv frowned. What news? Kabir's voice lowered. Mira's family has invited you personally. They want you at the wedding. No excuses. Oriv's chest tightened. And for the first time, he wasn't just worried about himself, he was worried about what this would mean for Zoya. Because something told him, she wasn't just a guest in his house anymore. She was becoming part of his heart. The next morning, the mansion felt unusually still. Oriv sat at the breakfast table, staring at the envelope Kabir had delivered. It wasn't just an invitation card, it was embossed in gold, heavy with expectation. The couple met a wedding. Venue, Royal Orchid Palace. Date, 2 weeks from now. Inside was a personal note from Mira's father. Your presence would honor us. The past is behind us, Oriv. We wish for you to bless this new beginning. Oriv's hands tightened around the card. Bless them. How could he bless what had broken him? Zoya entered the dining hall quietly, carrying her cup of tea. She noticed the card in his hand, the tension in his shoulders. Another business deal, she asked softly. He gave a humorless laugh. Worse. An invitation. He slid the card across the table. Zoya read it slowly, her lips parting slightly. Her wedding. Oriv nodded, his voice low. And they expect me to attend. Smile. Pretend. Like I'm not dying inside. She watched him, her chest tightening. The pain in his voice was raw, unmasked. That evening, Kabir dropped by, trying to lighten the mood. Look, Oriv, it's just a wedding. You show up, shake hands, give a gift, leave. Done. Oriv snapped, it's not just a wedding, Kabir. It's her wedding. Zoya, who was arranging flowers nearby, stilled at his words. She didn't know why her heart ached hearing them. Kabir leaned back, studying Oriv. Then take someone with you. Don't go alone. Show them you've moved on. His eyes flicked deliberately to Zoya. Oriv stiffened. Kabir, don't. But Kabir shrugged. Why not? She's already here. People will stop whispering about your loneliness. Besides, she has a certain grace. Even without the jewels and gowns. Zoya felt her cheeks heat up. She lowered her gaze, wishing she could disappear. After Kabir left, the silence stretched between Oriv and Zoya. Finally, Zoya whispered, you don't have to take me to shield yourself from gossip. Oriv turned to her, his voice gentle. That's not why I'd want you there. Her eyes lifted, searching his face. Then why? He hesitated, then said quietly, because when you're around, the noise in my head fades. And I think I'll need that. The air between them shifted. Zoya's breath caught, but she quickly masked it with a small nod. The following days were filled with unspoken tension. Oriv tried to distract himself with work, but every time he looked at Zoya, helping the staff, reading in the library, humming softly in the kitchen, he felt both comfort and confusion. One night, he found her in the garden, sitting under the same mango tree as before. Zoya, he said quietly, what would you do if someone you loved was slipping away and you couldn't stop it? She looked up at the stars, her expression unreadable. I'd let them go. Because love isn't about holding someone back. It's about wishing them happiness, even if it's not with you. Her words pierced him. For a long moment, he just stared at her, wondering what heartbreak had taught her such wisdom. As the wedding approached, Oriv made his decision. He would attend. Not for appearances. Not for business. But because some doors needed to be closed in person. The night before the event, he found Zoya in her room, folding her simple clothes into a small bag. What are you doing? Oriv asked, confused. I should leave, she said softly. Tomorrow isn't my place. It's between you and her. I don't belong there. Something inside him panicked at the thought of her walking away. No, he said firmly. You're not leaving. She looked at him, startled. His voice softened. Zoya, I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But I know one thing, I need you there. The room fell silent. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wanted to argue, to tell him she was just a stranger he had saved. But the truth was, she wanted to stay. And so, without another word, she nodded. The next morning, Oriv stood before the mirror, dressed in a charcoal sherwani. Zoya stepped into the hall in a soft blue saree the staff had helped her drape. Simple, elegant, nothing extravagant. Oriv's breath caught for a moment when he saw her. He quickly looked away, composing himself. Together, they walked out to face the storm of Mira's wedding. But what they didn't know was that the storm would not just test Oriv's heart, it would also drag Zoya into the center of it. The Royal Orchid Palace stood like a dream out of reach, its ivory pillars glowing under strings of fairy lights, the entrance lined with roses and jasmine. Music floated in the air, laughter spilling out as guests in glittering attire arrived one after another. Inside the car, Oriv sat quietly, his jaw tense. Beside him, Zoya adjusted the edge of her blue saree nervously, her fingers trembling. Are you sure about this? She whispered. Oriv glanced at her, his eyes steady. Only because you're here. The words made her heart skip, though she quickly looked away. As they stepped out, flashes went off. Paparazzi swarmed instantly. Oriv Malhotra. Sir, you came. And who is the woman with you? Zoya froze, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Oriv noticed and instinctively placed a protective hand at the small of her back, guiding her firmly through the crowd. Inside, the whispers began. That's Oriv Malhotra, right? But who's the girl? She doesn't look like she belongs here. Maybe a new girlfriend. No, look at her clothes, too simple. Definitely not from our circles. Zoya felt the sting of their words, though none were spoken directly to her. She lowered her eyes, wishing the floor would open and swallow her. But Oriv walked tall, his presence commanding silence as they entered the grand hall. The hall glittered with chandeliers, gold drapes, and floral arches. In the center stood Mira, radiant in a crimson bridal lehenga, her jewelry shimmering as relatives surrounded her with blessings. Beside her was Rohan Mehta, charming, confident, the perfect groom in everyone's eyes. When Mira's gaze found Oriv across the hall, her smile faltered. Her eyes flickered, first surprise, then something deeper, when she noticed Zoya at his side. Her relatives noticed too. Who is she? Oriv never brings anyone. The air shifted. A ripple of curiosity spread across the room. Kabir appeared suddenly, grinning as if he lived for drama. You two are the center of attention. Perfect. Not helping, Oriv muttered under his breath. Zoya leaned closer, whispering, maybe I should wait outside. I don't belong. But Oriv cut her off, his voice low but firm. You belong where I say you do. And you belong here, with me. Her chest tightened at his words, but before she could respond, an announcement boomed across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the bride and groom for their first dance. The crowd parted as Mira and Rohan stepped onto the dance floor. Music began, soft, romantic, the kind that carried old memories like perfume. Oriv's chest clenched as he watched Mira laugh in Rohan's arms. The way her head tilted back, the sparkle in her eyes, it was the same way she used to look at him once. Zoya noticed his pain. Her hand hovered, as if she wanted to comfort him, but she held back. When the dance ended, Mira's father approached Oriv warmly. So glad you came, Beta. Your presence means a lot to us. Oriv forced a polite smile. Of course, uncle. I wish Mira all the happiness in the world. But his voice cracked slightly on her name. Mira noticed. Her eyes drifted again to Zoya. Something in her expression sharpened, curiosity, maybe even jealousy. Later, during dinner, Zoya sat quietly at the edge of the table, feeling every stare, every whisper. Oriv tried to engage her in small talk, but she only managed polite nods. At one point, she excused herself and slipped onto the terrace for air. The lights and noise had become too much. She stood alone, looking up at the stars, when she heard a voice behind her. You must be the reason Oriv came tonight. Zoya turned. It was Mira. Her bridal bangles jingled softly as she stepped closer, her eyes sharp, studying Zoya. Zoya's throat went dry. She whispered, I didn't mean to cause trouble. He just asked me to come. Mira tilted her head, her smile graceful but edged with steel. Oriv never does anything without a reason. So tell me, what exactly are you to him? Zoya froze, caught in the crossfire of a love story she never asked to enter. The terrace was quieter than the buzzing hall, the night air heavy with the scent of roses and rain-soaked grass. Yet the silence between the two women felt louder than the music inside. Mira's eyes, lined with kohl and shadowed with unshed emotion, pinned Zoya in place. You didn't answer me, Mira said, her voice calm but sharp. What are you to Oriv? Zoya's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this moment, and certainly not like this. She lowered her eyes. I'm nobody. He helped me when I had nowhere to go. That's all. Mira's lips curved into a faint, almost bitter smile. Nobody. Oriv Malhotra doesn't bring nobodies to my wedding. He doesn't even let friends close, not after what happened. And yet, her eyes flicked over Zoya's saree, her simplicity, her innocence. Here you are. Zoya stayed quiet, her fingers twisting in the edge of her palu. Mira took a slow step closer. Do you love him? The question struck like lightning. Zoya's heart pounded. She wanted to deny it, to walk away, but the truth clawed at her chest. She swallowed hard. No. I respect him. He's been kind. But love. Her voice faltered. Love isn't for people like me. Something in Mira's expression softened for just a moment, like a crack in her armor, but it quickly hardened again. You don't know him the way I do, Mira whispered. You don't know how deep he can love, and how much he can destroy himself for it. Zoya finally looked up, her eyes shining. And you? If you knew, why did you leave him? Mira's face went pale. She wasn't expecting the question. For a long moment, she stood frozen, her bridal bangles trembling faintly in her hand. I didn't leave him, Mira said at last, her voice breaking. Circumstances, family, misunderstandings. Everything came crashing down. And by the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. Zoya felt the weight of her words. This woman in front of her wasn't just a bride. She was someone still tangled in the threads of a love story unfinished. Inside, Oriv was searching. He had lost sight of Zoya in the crowd, and panic prickled at him. He finally spotted her silhouette on the terrace, and froze when he saw who she was with. Mira. His heart thudded. He stepped closer but stayed hidden, hearing fragments of their voices carried by the wind. Mira's eyes glistened as she said, almost to herself, sometimes I wonder if he still loves me. If he still feels the same. Zoya's chest tightened. She glanced toward the hall, knowing Oriv was somewhere inside, his heart still bleeding for this woman. Taking a deep breath, Zoya spoke softly but firmly. He does. I can see it in his eyes every time your name comes up. But Mira G, she hesitated. If you're marrying someone else, then let him heal. Don't keep him half alive with memories. Mira's breath hitched. The words cut deep, but they were true. For a moment, both women stood in silence, the bride and the stranger, bound by the same man's heart. Before either could say more, Oriv finally stepped out of the shadows. His presence was like a storm breaking. Both women turned, startled. Oriv's eyes moved between them, confusion and anger flickering in their depths. What's going on here? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. Mira opened her mouth, but Zoya quickly shook her head. Nothing. We were just talking. But Oriv wasn't convinced. His gaze lingered on Mira, old wounds burning, and then on Zoya, whose silence spoke volumes. The air was thick with words unsaid, hearts trembling on the edge. Then, from inside, the wedding priest's voice rang out. Bride and groom, please come forward for the final rituals. Mira's father appeared at the door, smiling warmly. Mira Beta, everyone is waiting. Mira turned back, her eyes lingering on Oriv just a moment longer than necessary, before she walked away, her anklets chiming like fading echoes of a love story unfinished. Zoya stayed rooted, staring at the ground. Oriv looked at her, torn between questions and gratitude, but before he could speak, she whispered, almost broken. She still loves you. Oriv froze, the words slicing through him. The sacred fire flickered at the center of the mandap, its flames dancing in rhythm with the chants of the priest. The air inside the hall grew thick with incense and the hum of mantras. Guests gathered in eager anticipation as the moment of union approached. Oriv stood at the edge of the crowd, his face calm but his heart in chaos. Every chant, every blessing, felt like a dagger twisting deeper. Beside him, Zoya watched silently. She could sense the storm raging inside him, though he stood with his back straight, fists clenched discreetly. The priest called out, "Bride and groom, please rise for the Ferrers." Mira and Rohan stood together, their hands lightly touching, a garland of jasmine between them. Mira's eyes flickered once toward the crowd, toward Oriv. Their gazes met. Just for a second. Just enough to send old memories crashing down. Oriv holding her hand under the college banyan tree. Her laughter in his car on their first long drive. The moment he slipped a ring on her finger. And now, another man tying his fate with hers. Oriv felt his chest constrict. He wanted to walk out, to escape, but his feet refused to move. Kabir, standing nearby, whispered sharply, "Don't do this to yourself, Oriv. Just leave." But Oriv muttered back, "No. If I walk away now, I'll never forgive myself. I have to watch this end with my own eyes." Kabir's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Zoya's hands were trembling as she clutched the edge of her dupatta. She wanted to shield Oriv from this pain, but she could do nothing, except stand close, steady, like a quiet anchor in his storm. Suddenly, she leaned closer and whispered, "Breathe, Oriv. Just breathe." Her soft voice cut through the noise of the hall. For the first time in minutes, he inhaled deeply, grounding himself. His eyes flickered toward her, and in that brief glance, he saw not pity, but strength. The Ferrers began. Mira and Rohan circled the fire, the priest chanting blessings of loyalty, love, and prosperity. Guests showered them with petals, cheering. But Oriv's vision blurred. Each round felt like a nail sealing the coffin of his first love. Zoya noticed his lips tremble, his hands tighten. Quietly, she slipped her hand over his, not bold, not dramatic, just a gentle touch, enough to remind him he wasn't alone. His fist unclenched slowly. He didn't look at her, but he didn't pull away either. On the final Fira, the priest declared, "With this, you are bound together for 7 lifetimes." The hall erupted in applause. Guests rose, clapping, smiling, congratulating. Oriv clapped too, once, twice, but the sound felt hollow, lifeless. He forced a polite smile, but inside, he was breaking. Mira glanced at him again, her own smile faltering. For a moment, it seemed like she wanted to run to him, to undo everything. But Rohan squeezed her hand, grounding her back into her choice. And just like that, Oriv's last thread of hope snapped. When the rituals ended, Oriv excused himself, muttering something about needing air. He strode out of the hall, his breathing ragged. Zoya followed instinctively, finding him outside under the palace arch, his eyes closed, his fists pressed against the wall. He whispered hoarsely, "It's over. Truly over." Zoya's throat tightened. She wanted to comfort him, but the words tangled inside her. Instead, she said softly, "Sometimes endings are the only way to begin again." Oriv looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had once been a stranger was now the only one holding him steady. Something flickered in his eyes, something unspoken, fragile, but real. But before either could process it, a voice called from behind. It was Mira. Her bridal veil fluttered as she stepped into the archway, her face pale, her eyes locked on Oriv. "Oriv, I need to talk to you. Alone." Zoya's heart stilled. She glanced at Oriv, waiting to see if he would follow Mira back into the past, or finally let her go. The palace garden stretched out like a dream, fountains sparkling under moonlight, roses swaying gently in the evening breeze. But to Oriv, the beauty meant nothing. His chest was tight as he stood face to face with Mira, the woman who had once been his whole world. Behind them, Zoya lingered in the shadows, torn. She wanted to leave, to give them space. But something inside her refused to move, maybe fear, maybe instinct. Oriv broke the silence first, his voice clipped. "What do you want, Mira? Haven't you already made your choice?" Mira flinched at his coldness, but she steadied herself. "I had no choice, Oriv. That's what you never understood." A bitter laugh escaped him. "No choice? You left me without a word. The day after our engagement, you vanished. And when I came to you, your father threw me out like I was nothing." Mira's eyes welled with tears. "Do you really think I wanted that? Do you think I didn't cry myself to sleep every night after?" Oriv's voice hardened. "Then why didn't you fight? You were my world, Mira. I would have fought the whole world for you. But you just let me go." Mira's lips trembled. She stepped closer, her whisper breaking. "Because I was protecting you." Oriv froze, his anger faltering. "Protecting me? From what?" Mira glanced around, as if the truth was too heavy to speak in the open. "Finally," she whispered, "my father discovered something about your business, back then, when you were still struggling. He said if I didn't end things, he would destroy you. Ruin your career before it even began. I thought sacrificing my love was the only way to save you." Her tears fell freely now. "I wanted to tell you, Oriv. God knows I did. But he threatened to ruin your family, your future. I couldn't let that happen. So I left, hoping you'd hate me enough to move on." Oriv's world tilted. His breath caught in his throat. For years, he had lived with bitterness, convinced she had betrayed him. And now, this? He whispered, almost to himself, "All this time, it wasn't you." Mira reached out, her hand trembling. "It was always you, Oriv. Even today, when I stood beside Rohan, it was your name my heart was whispering." Zoya's chest tightened as she heard those words. She turned away, gripping the railing of the garden balcony, her eyes burning. She wasn't meant to hear this, yet each word stabbed deeper. For weeks, she had seen Oriv's pain, stood beside him, tried to hold him together. And now, here was Mira, the woman he had always loved, pouring out her truth. Wasn't this what Oriv wanted all along? Closure. Or maybe even a second chance. Oriv's mind raced. Memories of their laughter, their stolen moments, the promises they had once made, it all came flooding back. For a second, he almost saw himself pulling her into his arms, forgiving everything, starting again. But then, his gaze shifted. Just beyond the rose bushes, he caught sight of Zoya's silhouette. Zoya, quiet, steady Zoya, who had asked for nothing, expected nothing, but had given him strength in ways he hadn't known he needed. His heart wavered between the woman of his past and the woman who had quietly entered his present. Mira's hand touched his arm, desperate. Oriv, please. Tell me you still love me. Tell me these years meant nothing, and we can start again. Oriv's lips parted, but no sound came. His heart pounded violently, caught in a battle he couldn't untangle. Before he could answer, Rohan's voice echoed from the pathway. Mira! Everyone is waiting. Mira stiffened, quickly wiping her tears. She looked at Oriv one last time, her eyes pleading. I'll always love you, even if fate chose differently. Then she walked away, her anklets fading into the night. Oriv stood frozen, her confession burning in his chest. He had answers now, but no peace. Slowly, he turned, only to find Zoya wasn't there anymore. The spot where she had stood was empty. Panic flared in him. For the first time, he realized, while chasing the ghost of his past, he might have just lost the only person anchoring his present. The palace corridors buzzed with celebration. Guests laughed, music rose, and the bride and groom received blessings. But for Oriv, the sounds were muffled, distant, because Zoya was gone. He searched the garden, the terrace, the hallways. Nothing. Panic tightened in his chest. Zoya, he called under his breath, ignoring the curious stares from passing guests. His voice carried urgency, something he wasn't used to feeling. Kabir found him pacing near the courtyard. What's wrong? You look like a storm. She's gone, Oriv muttered. Zoya. I turned, and she wasn't there. Kabir frowned. Maybe she went back inside. No, Oriv shook his head, his tone sharp. She wouldn't leave without telling me, unless, his voice trailed off, dread creeping in. Unless she had heard everything. Meanwhile, Zoya walked briskly down the palace driveway, the sound of her anklets lost in the chaos of the night. Her chest heaved, not from the walk, but from the weight inside her. She still loves you. She had said those words earlier, and now Mira had confirmed it herself. Zoya felt like an intruder in a story that wasn't hers. Her eyes burned as she whispered to herself, he deserves her, not me. I was just temporary. A car honked, pulling her out of her thoughts. She waved it away, hugging her dupatta around her tightly. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay. Back in the palace, Oriv stormed out of the main hall, his sherwani brushing against the marble floors as he moved with urgency. He cornered one of the staff members. Did you see the woman who came with me? Blue saree, simple jewelry. The man hesitated. Yes, sir. She left through the front gates. She looked upset. Oriv's stomach dropped. Without another word, he sprinted down the corridor, ignoring Kabir's calls behind him. The rain had started again, soft, steady, as though the heavens knew hearts were breaking tonight. Oriv reached the palace gates, scanning the empty road. Nothing. Just darkness stretching into the distance. His chest heaved as he whispered, Zoya, where did you go? Memories flashed, her laughter in the kitchen, her steady voice telling him to breathe, the way her hand had held his in silence. And suddenly, realization struck him like a thunderbolt. He didn't just need her. He wanted her. Not as a distraction, not as a shield, but as the only person who had seen him at his weakest and still stood beside him. Kabir caught up, panting. Oriv, slow down. She'll come back. No, Oriv's voice broke, raw. You don't understand. I can't lose her. Not like I lost Mira. Kabir studied him quietly, then placed a hand on his shoulder. Then stop standing here and go after her. Love doesn't wait around, Oriv. If she's walking away, it's because she thinks she doesn't matter to you. Prove her wrong. The words cut deep. Oriv clenched his jaw, his resolve hardening. I will, he said, his eyes fierce. Even if I have to search every corner of this city, I'll find her. Somewhere, miles away, Zoya sat in a small roadside dhaba, her saree damp, her eyes swollen. She sipped a cup of lukewarm tea, staring blankly at the rain outside. The owner's wife noticed her. Beta, are you waiting for someone? Zoya forced a small smile. No, no one's coming. But even as she said it, her heart betrayed her. Because deep down, a tiny voice whispered, what if he does? Back at the palace, Oriv climbed into his car, determination burning in his veins. Hold on, Zoya, he whispered into the night as he sped into the rain. I'm not letting you disappear. Not this time. The city stretched wide and merciless before him, but Oriv knew one thing with certainty. This was no longer about Mira, or closure, or the past. This was about Zoya. And he wasn't going to rest until he found her. The city was alive with chaos, traffic horns blaring, headlights slicing through the sheets of rain, and the occasional street vendor calling out despite the storm. But to Oriv, the world had narrowed to one single purpose, finding Zoya. His wipers beat frantically against the downpour as he scanned every sidewalk, every bus stop, every shadow. His heart thudded with every passing minute. Where would she go, he muttered, gripping the wheel. She has no family, no friends. She only had me. The truth of those words hit him like a stone. She only had him, and he had failed her tonight. Meanwhile, Zoya sat in the corner of a small roadside dhaba, her saree damp, her dupatta clinging to her shoulders. A dim bulb flickered above her as she stirred her untouched tea. The owner's wife approached kindly. Beta, you'll fall sick sitting in wet clothes. Come inside the kitchen, warm yourself. Zoya forced a smile. Thank you, Auntie. I'll leave soon. But her heart wasn't in her words. She felt hollow, as if the fragile place she'd begun to build for herself in Oriv's life had been ripped away in a moment. She whispered to herself, he belongs to her, not me. I was foolish to think otherwise. Oriv drove past the marketplace, his headlights briefly illuminating the rows of dhabas and tea stalls. Something in his chest pulled. He slowed, scanning each one carefully. And then, he saw her. Through the rain-streaked glass of his car window, he caught a glimpse of Zoya sitting alone at a dhaba table, her head bent, her saree clinging to her. A rush of relief, so powerful it nearly knocked the breath out of him, surged through his chest. He pulled over recklessly, ignoring the splash of muddy water as he stepped out into the storm. Zoya looked up when she heard hurried footsteps. And there he was, Oriv, drenched from head to toe, his eyes blazing with desperation. Her breath caught. What are you doing here? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at her, as if making sure she was real, not some cruel illusion of the night. Then, his voice cracked. Don't you ever disappear on me again. Zoya's throat tightened. She rose slowly, clutching her dupatta. Why, Oriv? Why does it matter? You have your answers now. You know Mira still loves you. That's what your heart always wanted, isn't it? Her words trembled, but her eyes held steady. Then why come after me? Oriv stepped closer, the rain dripping from his hair, his voice raw. Because it isn't Mira I was terrified of losing tonight, it was you. Zoya froze, her chest pounding. He took another step, his voice breaking. Do you even know what it did to me, looking around and not seeing you there? For years, I've carried this hollow inside me, and tonight I realized, when you're beside me, that hollow doesn't exist anymore. Zoya's eyes welled, but she shook her head stubbornly. No. Don't say that. You're hurt, confused. You don't mean it. Oriv's hand reached for hers, gripping tightly despite the rain. I've never meant anything more in my life. Tears spilled down Zoya's cheeks, mixing with the rain. Her heart ached to believe him, but fear held her back. You'll regret this tomorrow, she whispered. When the weight of the past returns, when you see her again, you'll regret choosing me. Oriv's voice dropped, fierce. The only thing I regret is not realizing sooner what you mean to me. For a long moment, they stood there, two broken souls in the middle of a storm, hearts colliding under the weight of truths unsaid. Then, before Zoya could reply, the Daba owner called out, "Saab, come inside. You'll both fall sick in this rain." The spell broke. Zoya pulled her hand back, her eyes filled with turmoil. Without another word, she turned and walked inside the Daba. Oriv stood outside, drenched, his chest heaving. He had found her, but winning her heart was going to be a battle of patience, not desperation. And as the rain poured harder, he knew this night was only the beginning. The rain didn't stop that night. It beat against the Daba roof like 1,000 tiny drums, drowning the silence between Oriv and Zoya. She sat quietly inside, shivering as wet strands of hair clung to her face. Oriv entered, dripping, his eyes never leaving her. The Daba owner's wife fussed, bringing a shawl. "Beta, you'll catch fever like this. Here, cover yourself." Zoya nodded politely, but her hands trembled as she tried to wrap the shawl. Oriv noticed instantly. He reached forward, gently pulling the fabric around her shoulders, his fingers lingering for a second longer than needed. Their eyes met, hers uncertain, his filled with something she couldn't name. By the time they left, the rain had slowed, but Zoya's body was already weakening. She coughed lightly, her steps faltering as Oriv guided her to the car. "Zoya, you're freezing," he muttered, guilt seeping into his voice. "I should have found you sooner." She gave a faint smile. "It's not your fault. Some storms, we bring upon ourselves." Oriv looked at her sharply, but she turned her face away, leaning against the window as the city lights blurred. By the time they reached his apartment, Zoya's fever had risen. She swayed as she stepped out, and before she could protest, Oriv swept her into his arms. "Oriv, put me down," she whispered weakly, embarrassed. "Not a chance," he said firmly, carrying her inside. He laid her gently on the bed, pulling off the wet chapata and replacing it with a warm blanket. His hands, usually steady and cold in business meetings, now trembled as he touched her forehead. "Damn it, you're burning up." The night stretched long. Oriv sat by her side, changing the damp cloth on her forehead again and again. Each time she stirred, whispering something in her fevered state, his chest tightened. Once, she murmured softly, "Don't leave me." Oriv froze, the words striking deep. He brushed her damp hair away gently and whispered back, "I'm not going anywhere, Zoya. Not anymore." Kabir called around midnight. "You didn't come back. Is everything okay?" Oriv glanced at the sleeping Zoya before replying softly, "She's sick. I'm staying with her." Kabir's tone turned teasing. "Looks like someone's heart has finally chosen." Oriv's silence was answer enough. Hours passed. Oriv didn't move from her side. He watched the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her hand gripped the blanket even in sleep, as if afraid to let go. And for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever: peace. As dawn painted the sky in shades of pale gold, Zoya stirred. Her eyes fluttered open to find him still sitting there, his head resting on the edge of the bed, his fingers lightly holding hers. She whispered hoarsely, "You stayed." Oriv lifted his head, his eyes heavy but gentle. "Where else would I go?" Her lips trembled, 1,000 unspoken questions swirling inside her. But before she could speak, Oriv squeezed her hand and whispered, "Rest now. We'll talk when you're stronger." For once, she didn't argue. She closed her eyes again, letting herself drift back to sleep, this time with the faint comfort of knowing she wasn't alone. But as Oriv sat watching her, a shadow of doubt lingered in his mind. Would she believe him when he told her what was in his heart? Or would her fear of being second choice always keep them apart? The morning light streamed softly through the curtains, painting the room in a warm golden hue. Zoya stirred, her fever lighter now, her body still weak but her spirit calmer. She opened her eyes slowly, and the first thing she saw was Oriv. He sat on the chair beside her bed, head bent, fast asleep. His posture was uncomfortable, his arm resting on the mattress, his hand still loosely holding hers as if afraid she would vanish again. For a moment, Zoya just watched him. His usually sharp features looked softened in sleep, his jaw unclenched, his breathing steady. She had never seen him like this, unguarded, vulnerable, human. Her heart whispered a truth she had been trying to deny: she loved him. But along with that came the fear that this love would shatter her one day. A soft cough escaped her, and Oriv stirred awake instantly. His eyes locked on her with relief. "You're awake," he whispered, his voice heavy with exhaustion but full of warmth. "How do you feel?" "Better," she said softly. "Thanks to you." He gave a small smile, brushing his hand across his face. "You scared me last night, Zoya. You can't disappear like that. Not from me." Her chest tightened. "Oriv, you don't have to." "I do," he cut her off firmly. "You don't understand. He paused, his words stuck in his throat. For a man who conquered boardrooms and battles, confessing his heart felt like climbing the steepest mountain. Zoya looked at him, eyes steady. "Oriv, why are you doing this? I don't want pity or gratitude. I don't want to be a replacement for what you lost." His expression hardened, almost hurt. "Is that really what you think you are to me? A replacement?" She looked away, silent. He leaned closer, his voice breaking. "Zoya, I stayed up the whole night not because I had to, but because I couldn't leave your side. Not for a second. Doesn't that tell you something?" Her lips parted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Just then, a sharp knock on the door. Both turned, startled. Oriv stood, irritation flashing in his eyes. Who could it be at this hour? He opened the door to find Mira standing there. She looked pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Behind her, the corridor light cast a faint halo around her figure. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Oriv, can I come in? I need to talk to you. Please." Zoya's stomach twisted. Her hand clutched the blanket tighter, her fragile heart trembling between hope and dread. Oriv stood frozen between the two women, the ghost of his past at the door and the fragile heartbeat of his present on the bed. Whom would he choose to face first? The silence at the door was thick. Rain drizzled faintly outside, but inside, the storm was human. Mira stood with folded hands, her voice trembling. "Oriv, just 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Oriv glanced over his shoulder at Zoya, who sat up weakly, clutching the blanket like armor. Her eyes told him everything: confusion, fear, and an unspoken plea: "Don't forget I'm here." Oriv clenched his jaw. For a moment, he wanted to slam the door and protect the fragile peace of the room. But then he sighed and stepped aside. "Come in." Mira entered quietly, her gaze flicking toward Zoya, lingering with a strange mixture of guilt and unease. Zoya lowered her eyes, not wanting to show how much it hurt. Mira's voice cracked as she faced Oriv. "Last night, when I told you the truth, it wasn't to win you back. It was because I couldn't live another day with the lie between us. I thought, maybe if you knew, you'd hate me less." Oriv's face was unreadable, his hands shoved into his pockets. "I don't hate you, Mira," he said quietly. "I never did. I just stopped trying to understand." Her eyes filled with tears. "I never stopped loving you, Oriv. Even when I stood beside Rohan, my heart," she trailed off, her gaze softening. "It still belongs to you." Zoya's grip on the blanket tightened until her knuckles turned white. The words pierced her like knives. Oriv's eyes flickered, pain, nostalgia, longing, but then they settled, firm. "Love isn't about chains to the past, Mira. It's about who holds your hand when the world falls apart." He glanced toward Zoya, his expression softening in a way Mira hadn't seen in years. Mira noticed. Her chest tightened. "It's her, isn't it?" she whispered. Zoya's breath hitched. Oriv didn't deny it. He took a step closer to Zoya's side, his voice steady. "Yes. It's her." The air cracked with finality. Mira staggered back as if struck. For years, she had been his first and only love. To hear those words, it shattered her pride, her hope. Her tears spilled as she whispered, "So easily? After everything we shared?" Oriv's voice broke. "Don't make this ugly, Mira. What we had, it was real. It shaped me. But it's over. I can't go back, no matter how much I honor what we once were." Zoya couldn't take it anymore. She pushed the blanket aside and stood, her legs trembling. "Stop," she whispered, her voice shaking. Both turned to her. Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked at Oriv. "Don't say this because of me. Don't choose me because you feel guilty or because I was here when you were broken. I can't. I can't be a bandage for your wounds." Oriv's heart clenched. "Zoya, you're not." But she stepped back, shaking her head. "I can't live in the shadow of someone else's love. I'd rather walk away than spend my life wondering if your heart still beats for her." Her words hung heavy in the air, cutting deeper than any knife. Mira's tears fell silently. Oriv's throat tightened, panic rising. He moved toward Zoya, desperate. "Don't you dare walk away again. Not after last night. Not after everything I realized." Zoya's eyes brimmed with sorrow. "Then prove it, Oriv. Prove it's me. Not her. Not the past." Her voice broke on the last word, and before Oriv could respond, she stumbled toward the door, her weak body barely carrying her. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed like thunder in the silence. Oriv stood frozen, torn between chasing her and facing the woman who had once been his whole life. Two women. Two truths. One heart pulled in opposite directions. Oriv didn't think twice. The moment the door shut behind Zoya, he lunged after her, his heartbeat thundering louder than his footsteps. "Zoya!" he shouted down the corridor, his voice echoing. But she was already outside, her frail body pushing against the morning chill. She walked fast, not daring to look back. Her vision blurred with fever and tears, yet she forced herself forward. "Oriv needs clarity," she told herself. "And I can't be the one to cloud his heart." Oriv burst out of the building, his eyes scanning the street desperately. And there, he saw her. Crossing the road, her cerise fluttering in the wind, her steps shaky. "Zoya!" She froze for a second at the sound of his voice, but then shook her head and kept walking. Oriv's chest burned. He sprinted forward, dodging between cars, ignoring honking horns. "Don't do this. Don't walk away." The traffic light turned green. A rush of vehicles surged forward. Zoya, in her daze, stepped too slowly. A motorcycle swerved sharply, nearly hitting her. "Zoya!" Oriv shouted, his blood running cold. At the last second, he pulled her into his arms, shielding her against the impact as the bike skidded past. They stumbled onto the sidewalk, her fragile body collapsing against his chest. She gasped, trembling. "Oriv!" He gripped her shoulders tightly, his voice breaking. "Do you see what you're doing to me? If anything had happened to you," his throat closed, "I would never forgive myself." Zoya tried to push away weakly. "You shouldn't." "Enough." Oriv cut her off, his eyes blazing with tears he never allowed anyone to see. "Stop saying I shouldn't care. Stop running from me. If my love for you isn't real, then why do I feel like I can't breathe when you're not near me?" Her heart pounded, but fear still clung to her. "And Mira? What about her?" Oriv's voice softened, aching. "Mira was my yesterday. You are my today. My tomorrow. My always." Zoya's lips trembled, her tears mixing with the drizzle. Before either could say more, a sudden ringtone shattered the moment. Oriv's phone buzzed insistently. Annoyed, he pulled it out, ready to ignore it, until he saw the caller ID. "Kabir." He answered sharply. "Kabir, not now." Kabir's voice was frantic, trembling. "Oriv, it's Rohan. He collapsed at the wedding. It's serious. You need to come. Now." Oriv's breath caught. Zoya's eyes widened. In the middle of their storm of emotions, life had thrown yet another curve. Rohan, Mira's husband. The man who unknowingly stood between every choice of their tangled hearts. Oriv looked at Zoya, torn. Duty pulled him one way, love the other. And for the first time, Zoya whispered with quiet strength, "Go, Oriv. She'll need you." Oriv's world spun. His heart screamed not to leave Zoya's side, but the weight of humanity, responsibility, and fate pressed down harder. Two roads. One choice. He clenched his fists, his chest heavy as he whispered, "Don't disappear again. Please." Then he turned toward his car, the rain picking up once more, carrying him back into the fire of unfinished bonds. Zoya stood frozen on the sidewalk, her tears lost in the storm. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and urgency. Fluorescent lights glared overhead as Oriv rushed through the corridors, his sherwani still damp from the rain. Kabir met him halfway, his face pale. Rohan's condition is critical, Kabir whispered. A sudden heart attack. The doctors are trying, but it doesn't look good. Oriv's chest tightened. He wasn't here as a businessman or a forgotten lover, he was here as a human being, pulled by the weight of humanity. When he reached the waiting area, Mira was there. She was pacing, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared, her hands trembling. The moment she saw Oriv, she broke down. "Oriv!" she cried, clutching at his arm like a drowning soul. "They won't let me in. What if I lose him? I can't bear it." Oriv stiffened, his instinct screaming to comfort her, but his heart whispered Zoya's name. Still, he couldn't ignore Mira's pain. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Mira, listen to me. Rohan is strong. The doctors will do everything." Her sobs shook against him. "What if he dies, Oriv? I've already lost you once. I can't lose him too." As the words fell from her mouth, Oriv's heart sank. "She still leans on me. But this isn't love, it's fear, desperation." And in that moment, he knew with painful clarity, Zoya had been right. To truly prove himself, he had to separate compassion from love. Hours dragged on. The doctor finally emerged, his expression grave. "We've stabilized him for now, but his heart is very weak. He'll need surgery soon. Prepare yourselves." Mira crumpled into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Oriv knelt beside her, his voice low. "Mira, you have to be strong. For him. For yourself." She lifted her teary eyes to him. "I don't know how. You were always my strength, Oriv. Even now, when I look at you, I feel safe. What am I supposed to do without you?" Her words stabbed him, but he forced himself to answer, firm but gentle. "You have Rohan. He is your husband, your partner. That's where your strength has to come from now. Not from me." Mira's tears fell harder. But deep inside, she knew he was right. While Oriv was at the hospital, Zoya wandered aimlessly through the city streets. The drizzle had stopped, but her heart carried its own storm. She replayed everything, his confession, his desperation, his words, "You are my tomorrow." A fragile hope had taken root. But when Kabir's call came and she told Oriv to go, part of her knew what it meant. He would always be pulled back to Mira's world. Zoya whispered to herself, her voice breaking. "Maybe love isn't about holding on, maybe it's about letting go before it destroys you." Her steps carried her toward the bus station. Somewhere inside her, the thought of leaving for good began to grow. Back at the hospital, Kabir pulled Oriv aside. "You've been here for hours. Go check on Zoya. She needs you too." Oriv's head snapped toward him. "Zoya? Where is she?" Kabir hesitated. "She wasn't at your place when I checked in earlier. I think she's gone." Oriv's world stopped. Gone. Again. His chest tightened with panic. He turned sharply toward the exit, his voice trembling with urgency. "I can't lose her. Not now. Not ever." Behind him, Mira's voice cracked, pleading. "Oriv, don't leave me like this. Please." Oriv paused only for a moment. His heart ached with the weight of her words. But then he whispered, almost to himself. "I'm sorry, Mira. My place isn't here anymore." And without looking back, he ran into the night, chasing the only name his soul answered to. Zoya. The bus station was alive with noise, hawkers shouting, engines roaring, luggage wheels dragging across wet concrete. But amidst the chaos, Zoya sat quietly on a wooden bench, a small bag at her feet. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her body still weak from fever, but her resolve was fragile yet firm. "This is for the best," she whispered to herself. "He'll be free to go back to the love he deserves." Her fingers clutched her dupatta as the announcement crackled overhead. Bus to Delhi departing in 15 minutes. She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently. 15 minutes, and this chapter of my life ends. But fate had other plans. Oriv's car screeched to a halt outside the station. He leapt out, rain soaking his clothes as he pushed through the crowd, his eyes frantic. "Zoya!" he called, his voice raw, desperate. Heads turned, but he only searched for her. And then, he saw her. Sitting there, fragile and small against the backdrop of the bustling station. Relief and fear surged through him. He ran toward her. Zoya looked up when she heard her name, her breath catching in her throat. Oriv stood there, drenched, breathless, his eyes burning with emotion. "Oriv," she whispered. He dropped to his knees before her, uncaring of the stares around them. His hands trembled as he gripped hers. "You were really going to leave me? Without a word? Without giving me a chance to prove what you mean to me?" Her tears spilled. "I don't belong in your world, Oriv. Mira, she's still a part of you. She needs you. I can't live in that shadow." He shook his head violently, his voice breaking. "No, Zoya. Listen to me. Mira was my past. You are my present, my future, my forever. Don't you understand? You're not my shadow, you're my light." She trembled, torn between fear and longing. "But what if one day you regret it? What if one day you look back and—" He silenced her with a desperate whisper. "The only regret I'll ever have is if you walk away right now. Zoya, I love you. Not because you healed me. Not because you stayed when no one else did. But because when I'm with you, I finally feel alive again." The words struck deep, melting the last of her resistance. Her sobs broke free as she whispered, "You really mean it?" Oriv cupped her face, his eyes fierce and tender all at once. "With every breath in me. It's you, Zoya. Always you." The bus engine roared to life, its horn blaring as if announcing the decision she had to make. Zoya looked at the bus, then back at him. Her heart raced. The choice was hers, leave behind this love out of fear, or step into it with faith. Slowly, trembling, she let the bag slip from her hand to the floor. Oriv's eyes widened. His chest surged with relief. Zoya's voice broke as she whispered, "I don't want to run anymore. I want to stay, with you." Oriv pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the entire world would collapse if he let go. The crowd around them blurred into nothing. For the first time in years, his heart wasn't haunted by the past. It was full, because it finally beat for someone who was truly his. Days later, Rohan's surgery was successful. Oriv visited the hospital once more, not as a man torn between loves, but as a friend. Mira saw him with Zoya by his side, their hands intertwined, their hearts at peace. She smiled through her tears, whispering, "Maybe love was never about holding on, maybe it was about letting go when it's time." And with that acceptance, the storm of years finally stilled. Epilogue Rose. Oriv and Zoya's love wasn't perfect. It had scars, it had storms, but it was real. Built not on illusions of forever, but on the courage to stay when it mattered most. The moral was simple: true love isn't about who came first, or who left. It's about who stays, who fights, who chooses you again and again, even when the world tries to pull them away. And so, when hearts collided, they didn't shatter. They created something stronger. Something eternal.